On today's episode of the Devon Messenger Show, we're previewing and predicting Arkansas versus number 17 Texas. Longhorns fans, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content, and check us out at HornSports.com for all the latest in Texas news. I was not here this last weekend for the Georgia game. I did make my pick on HornSports.com. If you did read that, I did pick the Georgia Bulldogs, and I think we saw why. Texas just hasn't been the biggest dog on the block, and you need to beat the king of the hill in order to get that title. And they just have not been able to beat Georgia in recent history, and until they do so, I'm not going to be picking them in these big games, and you saw why once again. But before we talk a little bit about the Georgia game, as well as talk about previewing this Arkansas game, just going to give some basic game information. The game is Saturday the 22nd at 2:30 p.m. Central Time at Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium in Austin, Texas. The game is televised on ABC, and the Longhorns are favored by 9.5 points. Now that's a big spread. I know Arkansas is 2-8 on the year. However, Texas has shown just a lack of ability in terms of putting away opponents. For the ones that they should be beating up, the games are far too close. And then for those teams that maybe are in a different league than the Longhorns, they also have been pretty much bullying them. And I know they do have a loss to Florida. Not a great team, but Ohio State, of course, the top-ranked team in the nation. But we're going to talk about Arkansas here. They're led by head coach Bobby Petrino, who is there on an interim basis, replacing Sam Pittman, and it has not been pretty, let's be honest. For the Arkansas Razorbacks, they have 8 losses, like I mentioned, but they have played some great teams, such as Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Tennessee, and Texas A&M, just to name a few. But despite the record, as I mentioned, they've played some good opponents, and I would be very cautious if I was Longhorns, and I'll talk about it here in a second. But to begin with the Razorbacks, you got to start at quarterback with redshirt senior Taylon Green. Now, Green has a lot of potential at the quarterback position, and I know it's funny saying that when he's a redshirt senior, but he's shown flashes of brilliance, honestly, at the quarterback position. However, this year has been quite up and down. He does have 19 passing touchdowns, but he does also have 10 interceptions. He has a little bit over 2,500 passing yards, 2,537 to be exact. So he's been able to air out the ball. However, yet again, the inefficiency in terms of staying out of the turnover column has really hurt the Razorbacks so far this year. But he adds a little bit more in terms of his legs. And we're going to talk about his running back pair as well. But Green adds 717 yards on the ground with an additional 7 touchdowns. So while Green has been inconsistent in the passing game, still more good than bad, he also adds an extra element running the football. 717 yards from the quarterback position is insane. Of course, there's still a couple weeks left in the season, and who knows, maybe he gets close to that 1,000 mark after the year is all said and done. That's just something to watch out for. I know the Longhorns historically have struggled sometimes when having to play some of these quarterbacks that can get to the boundary, but so far this year, they've actually done an okay job of limiting the running ability from those guys. Now, his passing targets, I wouldn't say anything too crazy here. The funny thing about this Arkansas team is they are very experienced. A lot of the key players are not only seniors, but you got a lot of redshirt seniors, and one being Omega Blake, who is 6'2". He is a redshirt senior, 51 catches on the year, 678 yards, and 4 touchdowns. The guys behind him, another redshirt senior, Raylan Sharp, 34 catches, 492 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then lastly, at tight end, you got a senior, Rohan Jones, 13 catches, 411 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Now, I will say that last name was the one that really stood out to me, being Rohan Jones, because he only has 13 catches on the year, but he has 411 receiving yards. As you can tell, when Green is able to find him, those are some big chunk plays. So you got to watch out. It's not going to happen too often in terms of him beating you down the field, but when he does, it seems like he does accumulate these big chunk plays with 4 touchdowns. But again, the Razorbacks offensively, this is the surprising part. Offensively, it's a pretty solid team. 25th in the nation in scoring offense with just over 34 points a game. For a team that is 2-8, I did not expect that coming in and doing this research. Very enlightening. We were talking about the passing offense, 31st in the nation, very respectable. I wouldn't say anything too crazy, but 31st, that is definitely in the top third of the nation, 264.6 yards per game. Now, again, solid passing game, but why am I holding back? It's because the running game has actually been the strength of this team. 18th in the nation with just over 205 rushing yards a game. I talked about Green's ability to really go sideline to sideline in terms of running the football, but also he's got a senior running back who, Mike Washington, adding 915 yards and 7 touchdowns this year, soon to eclipse that 1,000-yard mark. That is really the heart of this team, and the ability to pair that with a running quarterback, I think, is really where Arkansas has separated themselves offensively. Again, being one of the best teams in the nation at running the football, they can pair that running ability with the passing attack. And again, guys like Rohan Jones might not be getting a ton of targets, but when they do, catches the defense off guard and by surprise, and you've been seeing that just by their stats. However, offensively, I don't know if Arkansas can mask what the defense for the Razorbacks has been, because it has been quite atrocious. They are 119th in the nation in scoring defense, allowing just over 32 points a game. So I think you can tell where I'm going with this, because they haven't been able to mask that defense so far this year. 119th in scoring defense out of 134. So as good as the offense has been, the defense has been actually worse. And that just hasn't been of course, winning formula for a 2-8 group. Defensively, they are led by linebackers, redshirt senior Xavier Sori and redshirt senior Steven Dix Jr., who lead the team in tackles with 71 and 69 respectively. However, for me, I think the real player to watch out for on this Arkansas team is on the defensive line. 6'6" defensive lineman Quincy Rhodes Jr. has amassed 8 sacks. So not a great defense. I'm not going to really go into them and waste your guys' time. And if you're the Longhorns, you got to think this is the week where you can finally put something on the board, something on paper. I know against Georgia last weekend, only scoring 10 points. Arch Manning did a solid job, was not helped out by his receivers, a couple of drop passes and key moments. However, overall, as an entire offensive group, they have to be better. Running the football, I'm going to talk about that in a second, has not been Texas' specialty this year. Honestly, the past 2 years, they just haven't been a team to be scared of in that regard. And so, speaking of that, we're going to go... We ran the scouting report already. We're going in the X factors here. Quintravion Wisner for Longhorns. You got to see something more out of him. And I'm not putting the blame on him per se. It's both the running backs and the offensive linemen in tandem. But Wisner against Georgia, only 9 carries for 37 yards. So part of that might be the game plan and not giving the football to them as much as they could. However, they just haven't had that breakaway ability that past running backs for the Longhorns have possessed. Bijan Robinson on any given carry could take it to the end zone. Now, I know that is Bijan Robinson, so very unfair to compare, but even in just more recent history, Jonathan Brooks, when healthy, one of the great running backs in college football, arguably the best running back in the sport until he got hurt. You need that quality of a running back in order to really save an offense like this, because they haven't been able to rely on anything. And again, the running game has been suspect. But in addition to Wisner and the running backs being an X factor here, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm not saying the passing game, but I'm saying the receivers for Texas also have to step up. Again, multiple dropped passes against Georgia is not going to help anybody. Now you're playing a defense in Arkansas that is, let's pull out the pen and paper here, 106 in the nation, again, out of 134 qualifying teams, allowing 245.3 to be specific passing yards per game. You got to take advantage of this group that has not been great. You've seen some life out of guys like Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore and Emmett Mosley himself, But again, it's just been the inconsistencies and the lack of scoring production that has haunted Texas this year. Against Arkansas, you have to put up points against a team that has played great offensively because you have to keep pace with them. However, of course, Texas defense leaky at times, overall much better than Arkansas, but we'll see how that plays out on Saturday. Now we're moving to the next topic, danger level. I know for a 2-8 team, you're expecting me to say the danger level is a 1 or 2, but I think if you're a realistic Longhorn fan and have been watching all year, I think you'd expect it to be a little bit higher. I would at least hope. Texas is not a college football playoff team at this moment. I don't know if that's going to change, but you have to keep it 100, and right now they don't deserve to be in the playoff. And I think any spitballing scenario where we try to get them into the playoff is a little bit out of touch because the Longhorns, again, have not looked like that team. Now, if they win against Arkansas and then they convincingly win against A&M, maybe we're having a different conversation here. However, I'm not seeing that happening, and I'm not going to be predicting 2 weeks out in advance. We're on the Arkansas week. I've got the danger level at a 6 here. The Razorbacks, again, pose a little bit of a trap game potentially, having just lost to Georgia, the Longhorns have, and then A&M the week following on the horizon. It's a bit of a gap here for Texas, and Arkansas being 2-8, it's a team that you can overlook a little bit despite, again, possessing a very powerful offense. I'm going to expect Texas to pull through, and we're going to talk about that, but I think this team definitely poses more of a challenge than you would think just based off of the overall record. But I do give that a 6. And then lastly, predictions. I've got the Longhorns winning, as I mentioned, 31-27. So I do have it a closer game than the spread. Now we're going to see maybe the Longhorns wake up and are a little bit vengeful after a loss against Georgia. However, again, I don't think the Longhorns have possessed that ability to stretch teams out, even with Arkansas having a suspect defense. I think this is going to be a bit closer than it should be. Potentially gets a little closer in the garbage time after Texas has that 10-point lead that Vegas is expecting, and it gets shrunk a little bit. But either way, Texas needs to score at least 30 points. That's been my number all year in terms of the qualifying of the offense and how good Texas is in actuality. It's great to have all these names on a roster, but unless you're putting up points, it doesn't matter. The defense has been overall great, but you can't carry an offense time and time again, and I think it's caught up to them a little bit. They've been on the field a lot, and when they've played these big matchups, they have let down a little bit. Now, again, Ohio State, the Week 1 game, great defensive performance, but once you roll out Florida and Georgia, and of course even the Mississippi State game, just has not been pretty, despite some, of course, key contributions from different guys, such as Colin Simmons, and then part of the problem, of course, is also injuries. But we're talking about defense a lot here. I got Texas winning 31-27. Again, Arkansas might have 8 losses on the year, but they showed fight in a tough conference, and they've played several tough teams. Texas will not be the first in that category. Can they keep things close? Can they pull off a surprising win in Austin? I don't think so, but you never know. Now, more important than my prediction, what's your score prediction? Let us know down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check us out at HornSports.com. And as always, have a great rest of your day.